HighBridge, a division of Recorded Books, presents The New Adolescence, Raising Happy and Successful Teens in an Age of Anxiety and Distraction, by Christine Carter, Ph.D. Read by Christine Carter, Ph.D. For Macy, Fiona, Tanner, and Amalia, I love you forever and ever, no matter what. Preface. This is a terrifying time to be a parent. Teens today are suffering from an epidemic of anguish that cannot be ignored. Fewer than half of today's teens would rate their own mental health as excellent or very good. Last year, almost 1/3 of high schoolers felt so sad or hopeless that they stopped doing their usual activities almost every day for 2 or more weeks in a row. Nearly 20% seriously considered suicide. While we've always known that teenagers can be moody, this is not what we are seeing here. Nor are we now newly detecting problems that have been in our society all along. The number of American adolescents who reported having had major depression in the preceding year has increased 52% since 2005, with the largest increases coming after 2011. The number of teens who visited emergency rooms for suicidal thoughts and suicide attempts doubled between 2007 and 2015. This isn't a phase that teenagers are going to grow out of. Since 2008, there has been a 71% increase in young adults ages 18 to 25 experiencing serious psychological distress. And yet, as a parent and a sociologist, I ignored the influx of alarming statistics for many years in order to quell my own anxiety. Until I did the math. I have 4 teenagers, making it statistically likely that one of my children will be counted in one of those scary statistics. Instead of denying the odds or continuing to ignore the data, I got to work on a sequel of sorts to my first parenting book, Raising Happiness, which was published in 2010. I am not the same parent now that I was when I wrote Raising Happiness. I've remarried and gone from being a single mom to my creative, energetic, and compassionate girls, Molly and Fiona, to being a married mom in a blended family of 6. I've gained an amazing, loving stepdaughter, Macy, and an affectionate, charming stepson, Tanner. As I write this preface, the kids are 15, 16, 17, and 18 years old. Our family is really different now than it was when I wrote Raising Happiness. But I've written The New Adolescence in the same spirit, as a handbook for helping our kids thrive in an age of accelerated change. Guided by research from neuroscience, psychology, and sociology, I've identified some best practices that are likely to be helpful to a wide range of families. While I'd like to say that I did this purely for the benefit of the world, the truth is that I also did it for myself and my own family. Things are profoundly different from the way they were only a decade ago, and I realized only recently that I needed to take my own parenting up a notch. Like many authors, I write to figure out what I think and what I know, and I do research to fill in the gaps. I do hope that what I have written here helps you with the teenagers in your life as much as it has helped me with mine. Take the strategies that work for you and leave the ones that don't. There's no need to saddle yourself with unrealistic expectations that you'll do it all, and certainly not that you'll do it all perfectly. Raising teenagers takes courage. Our best bet, as my dear friend Susie Reinhardt always says, is to choose brave over perfect. Here's what this book is not. It isn't a substitute for therapy or other professional help. It's not meant to guide you or your kids back from the throes of addiction, depression, or crippling anxiety. If you or someone in your family is really struggling, and especially if you think that they might hurt themselves, please talk to a professional, a licensed medical or mental health provider, right away. And if your kids are struggling with mental health issues, your family isn't alone. Have compassion for yourself. What you are going through is hard. I hope that this book will help, and also that you will surround yourself with emotional support. A note about who this book is for and how I'm protecting my kids' privacy. First, when I say kids or teens in this book, I'm technically talking about adolescents. Many researchers avoid the term teenager because it implies that all the action is happening between the ages of 13 to 18. In truth, most girls are at the end of puberty by the age of 13. And the hormones that cause puberty and the behavior we typically think of as teenagery start changing the brain before they start changing the body. Because, biologically speaking, a lot of adolescent growth happens between the ages of 9 and 13, puberty typically lasts 2 to 4 years. This book is written for educators, caregivers, and parents of kids potentially as young as 9. Socially and culturally, as well as from a brain standpoint, adolescence lasts much longer than puberty, usually until kids, especially boys, are in their mid-20s or later. So even though I may refer to kids or teenagers throughout this book, I'm really talking about adolescents, preteens, teenagers, and young adults. I call them kids not because of their age, but because I'm writing from the perspective of a parent, and my kids will always be my kids, no matter how old they are. Speaking of my kids, I've decided to protect their privacy in the following way. When I'm telling a story that is less than flattering, I will not use their names, opting instead for the less elegant but vaguer, my daughter. I'll always use female pronouns, so it won't be clear which of my children I'm talking about, and also so Tanner won't be singled out. And if we are friends and you are talking to my kids, please don't try to guess who is who. Finally, I'm grateful that my children are brave enough to be a part of this book at all. They know that it may open them up to some annoying questions, but they see how their generation is struggling, and they want to be a part of the solution. Their honest and sometimes unconscious feedback has made this book immeasurably better. I'm so happy to be on this great family adventure with them, with Molly and Fiona's dad, Mike, and with my unfailingly positive husband, Mark. Molly, Tanner, Fiona, and Macy, thank you for being on this great journey with me. Your courage inspires us all and makes the world a better place for teenagers everywhere. Introduction. In January, our longtime family friend Syra was totally fine. She stood in my kitchen beaming and radiant. A soon-to-graduate senior at a nearby college, she often came to our house for dinner. Over the last 4 years, she'd become a true role model for our kids. At 21 years old, she was really coming into her own. She had just returned home from a semester abroad, and she was standing taller than I'd ever seen her before. Her straight, glossy, dark hair fell around her shoulders, swishing as she told us excitedly about her time away. Syra was healthy and confident and beautiful. My 4 teenagers stood around her in rapt attention, a little starstruck. By February, Syra was back to her normal college routine, getting straight A's, working on her senior thesis. She was starting to worry about what she would do after graduation, which seemed both normal and strange to me, as she'd just landed a plum internship with a prominent newspaper. The next time we saw her, she hinted that she was struggling a little. She was spending 3 full days each week at the newspaper's San Francisco office, in addition to her full load of classes, her thesis, and a part-time job as a Spanish tutor. It was a lot. The daughter of immigrants, Syra grew up unconditionally loved and well cared for. Her parents believed that she and her brother could do anything, be anything. They made sure Syra went to great schools and played sports. They are active members of their church. They are the very definition of a tight-knit family. But in some ways, Syra misunderstood her parents' encouragement and support. When they said that she could be anything she wanted to be, Syra heard that she needed to be great. When they told her she could do anything, Syra heard that she needed to do everything. Almost overnight, being great at everything became too much. By March, Syra was in a downward spiral of depression and anxiety. She wasn't sleeping. She'd gotten her first B-, the lowest grade she could remember. She didn't know how to handle that kind of failure. She felt that she was falling behind on her thesis, although her professors didn't agree, and the newspaper was now sometimes asking for 3 stories a week instead of 2 because her work was so good. She didn't know how to say no. She feared disappointing everyone. She began to have panic attacks, which are terrifying. A person having a panic attack often feels like she's dying. Some days, she was unable to get out of bed. 5 weeks before her magna cum laude college graduation, Syra was contemplating suicide. Her inner world had gotten so dark and fearful that she struggled to see a reason to live. She began punching the insides of her arms until they were covered in blue bruises, hurting herself on the outside so that she could see and feel the pain that was tormenting her on the inside. Her bright future seemed to be vanishing into thin air. Fortunately, Syra's parents were able to get her into treatment. She started seeing a psychologist at her college several times a week. Her professors helped her make a plan to get back on track academically. The psychologist helped Syra quit her job and her internship to give her time to recover. In June, Syra graduated on time and with honors. Unfortunately, Syra's story is not uncommon. Syra's cohort of teenagers and college students, kids born between 1995 and 2012, are often called Generation Z or Gen Z, is on the brink of the most serious mental health crisis we've seen since we started measuring these things. No matter what data we look at, mental illness in teenagers and college students has skyrocketed in a very short period of time, zooming upward after 2011. And as I mentioned in the preface, this isn't just a wave of mental illness that we're seeing. According to renowned psychologist and demographer Jean Twenge, it's a tsunami. I had seen the scary statistics before Syra got sick. I'd carefully read Twenge's book, iGen, Why Today's Super-Connected Kids Are Growing Up Less Rebellious, More Tolerant, Less Happy, and completely unprepared for adulthood, and what that means for the rest of us. But it didn't totally register for me that this was something that could really happen to one of my kids, that it really was happening all around me in families I knew and loved. When Syra got sick, it suddenly hit me that the tsunami of mental illness that is overwhelming today's teenagers was not something I could, in good conscience, look away from. Like me, many parents turn away when they are confronted with super scary and very depressing information, finding reasons that the data do not apply to their families. Often, we write off adolescent depression and anxiety as normal teenage angst. We consider teenage drug and alcohol abuse normal experimentation, just like the partying we did in high school. Except that we know that this generation is different. Make no mistake, the mental illness and addictions they are suffering from are not normal. This means that it's time for us to take action. We need to understand what is happening so that we can course correct. In the words of Marie Curie, nothing in life is to be feared, it is only to be understood. Now is the time to understand more so that we may fear less. The good news is that we do understand why this generation is different and why they are suffering. And this means that we understand what we can do to reverse and prevent the scary trends in mental illness. Under pressure. I often hear parents lament about how much pressure their kids seem to be under from school, how much homework they get, and how stiff the competition is in virtually everything from athletics and academics to leadership and the performing arts. And I also hear from teachers and school administrators about how unreasonable parents are these days, pressuring their kids to achieve, to get into an elite college. More than 60% of high school students today say they feel a lot of pressure to get good grades. Another 27% say they feel some pressure to do so. Kids today seem so much busier than previous generations, taking more advanced placement or AP classes, doing more homework, volunteering more, playing more competitive sports, and so on, all as a means to get into a selective, brand name college. Vicky Abeles, director of the film Race to Nowhere, has been sounding the alarm about academic stress for more than a decade. In homes and classrooms across America, a silent epidemic is raging, she writes in her book Beyond Measure. It afflicts the 8-year-old lying awake, pulling his hair with worry over tomorrow's test. The 17-year-old straining to keep up in AP chemistry on top of 3 other AP classes and 2 sports and 4 clubs that she thought she needed on her resume. And the 13-year-old still studying past 1 a.m., wondering in the back of her bleary mind if this never-ending contest for credentials, this exhaustion, this feeling of meaninglessness is all life is. Our education culture has clearly been warped by competition. College admissions scandals, where wealthy parents buy their children spots on elite college campuses, make it obvious that our supposedly meritocratic educational system has become dysfunctional as more and more students apply for admission to the same handful of elite universities. But I don't think this narrative that kids are cracking under the pressure to achieve accurately represents everything that is really happening. If it were, you'd think that once the pressure of gaining acceptance to a college was off, because they were admitted and attending, students would begin to feel a little less overwhelmed. They don't, though. College students are not doing any better than younger teenagers. In fact, the American Freshman Survey recently documented the highest levels of unhappiness ever recorded in first-year college students. Every single indicator of a mental health problem measured in the National College Health Assessment has reached an all-time high. More than 63% of undergraduate college students felt overwhelming anxiety in the last 12 months. 42% felt so depressed they could not function. And, like Syra, 8% of college students intentionally injured themselves in the previous year, a 30% increase since 2011. When we step back and look at the data, we can see that all segments of teens, not just college-bound ones, seem to be having a hard time coping. What's happening to the kids whose parents aren't pushing them to get into a selective college? What about the teens who aren't running faster and faster on a hamster wheel of APs and varsity sports? There must be something else at work besides, or in addition to, increasingly competitive college admissions. While it's true that our education culture has gone insane with competition, and while it's true that our society is fixated on one narrow definition of success, this is only part of the picture. For starters, kids today aren't actually working themselves into the ground relative to past generations. The data show that my generation, Gen X, actually did more homework in the early 1990s than our Gen Z teenagers are doing. And while kids heading to 4-year colleges might be obsessed with their college applications, today's teenagers aren't piling on more extracurricular activities than in generations past. Time spent on student clubs and sports hasn't changed much over time. In fact, teenagers today have more free time because they aren't working for pay as often. In the late 1970s, 78% of high school seniors worked for pay during the school year. By the early 2010s, only 56% had jobs. A caveat. It's not that all segments of society are suffering at the same rates. It's that spiky increases in depression, anxiety, and suicidality are happening throughout society. It's true, for example, that teens with lower socioeconomic status suffer from higher rates of depressive symptoms than those with higher socioeconomic status. And girls are suffering much more than boys. 1 in 5 girls ages 12 to 17 report experiencing a major depressive episode in the past year. Almost 40% of 9th to 12th grade girls felt so sad or hopeless they stopped doing their usual activities. And nearly 1/4 considered suicide. About 1/5 made a plan to kill themselves, and more than 10% actually tried to do it. The perfect storm. The pressure to achieve is not the only thing that is causing depression and anxiety in our kids. Teens today are growing up in a perfect storm of social change happening so fast that our schools and our parenting aren't keeping up. Think about it. We are living and parenting through one of the greatest transformations in human history. The Fourth Industrial Revolution, the relatively recent technological transformation in virtually every industry, from transportation and pharmaceuticals to communication and agriculture, has fostered parallel social and psychological revolutions. In a single generation, how we all communicate, create, work, and think has fundamentally changed. But the technological revolution we are living through hasn't really reshaped the current generation of teenagers as much as it has shaped them to begin with. Today's teenagers communicate with social media more than they see their friends in person. They binge watch TV series alone in their rooms on personal devices instead of watching a sitcom in the family room. Many delay driving. Affluent teens use Uber and Lyft. They shop online, clicking on ads that are served specifically to them instead of hanging out at the mall with their peers. Humans have endured big changes like this before. In the 15th century, for example, the invention of the printing press gave birth to mass communication, which led to social, cultural, political, religious, and artistic advancements affecting the way that people lived, learned, and built their communities. The resulting scientific revolution and the Renaissance paved the way for the Age of Reason and the Enlightenment. All of these things changed human society forever. Few would argue in favor of reversing the period of growth and development that occurred as human society emerged from the Dark Ages. But let's not forget that these changes were probably not easy for the people adapting to them, who had to live through the massive institutional, societal, cultural, and religious upheaval as the new information era reshaped the human world. Humans and human social structures, like families, schools, and businesses, need time to adapt to change, especially big change. All of this is to say that the epidemic of anxiety and depression we are seeing comes not from the new technologies themselves, but from our lagging adaptations to this massive social change. Everything is changing so quickly that we can't keep up. We aren't teaching our kids how to manage their smartphones and social media, for example, in ways that won't hurt them. Why? Because most of us parents haven't adapted to all the new technologies ourselves, much less adapted our parenting. Eric Astrow Teller, CEO of Google's X Research and Development Lab, explains that when the rate of technological change exceeds our ability to adapt to it, as it now has, we human beings become dislocated. This means that our world is being reshaped faster, way faster, than we have yet been able to reshape our parenting. It's no surprise that the kids are feeling unmoored. I am not hoping to slow or reverse technological change. That's not even possible, even if it were desirable. Nor is this book a social critique. I'm a sociologist, observing what is happening with acceptance and curiosity, if not resignation. I am a parent determined to help my 4 kids adapt to this new world in ways that protect them. Adaptation isn't just about new digital technology. It's about all the ways that our world and society have changed in just one generation. For those reasons, this book is not about returning to a more analog world or trying to recreate what was good about our childhoods or our adolescence. This book offers adaptations for how we can integrate new ways of being, feeling, and doing into what we know produces health and happiness in humans, in both individuals and societies. Parenting 2.0. There is good news here. We do understand, for the most part, what is causing the massive wave of depression, anxiety, and suicidality in our teenagers. And because we understand the causes, the solutions are right in front of us. We can adapt our parenting so that society transforms along with the new technologies for the better. This book gives you concrete ways to adapt your parenting so that your kids are protected from these terrifying trends. This book will help you upgrade to Parenting 2.0 in 2 ways. The New Adolescence offers adaptations to the 2 massive transformations that are likely happening in your family: the developmental transformation of adolescence and the technological transformation of the age that we are living in. This book is your guide both to the new realities of parenting an adolescent and to the new technologies that have turned your tweener, teenager, or college student into a screenager. Once kids enter middle school, how we parent changes. What works for younger children doesn't work for teenagers. In addition, most of us are charting new ground here because the ways that we were parented when we were teenagers certainly won't work for adolescents today. You've probably heard that really skillful parents go from being their children's managers when they are in elementary school to being their coaches or consultants when they enter high school. Part 1 of this book will show you how and why to influence your teen without micromanaging them, even though you may be surrounded by helicopter parents who have not made this shift. To that end, chapters 1, 2, 3, and 4 are science-based pep talks that will make parenting easier for you and life better for them. In addition to adapting our parenting to our kids' developmental stage, we need to adapt our parenting to account for all the new technologies that have so dramatically changed our lives and the lives of our teenagers. Part 2 will give you the 3 most important and character-building skills that parents can teach their teens for success and happiness in the digital age: connection, focus, and rest. You'll learn how and why new technologies like smartphones and social media are contributing to the largest mental health crisis we've ever seen. But more important, you'll learn simple, concrete strategies for protecting your kids' mental health. Again, there is good news here, as there is a buy one, get one free special running in part 2 of this book. As you teach your kids how to cope with their smartphones and social media so that the new technologies don't undermine their friendships, their ability to manage stress, and their focus, you'll also likely become happier, more productive, and less stressed out. Part 3 is your handbook for talking to your teen about topics.
Sample complete. Ready to continue?